Dust rolled across the Oregon outpost in 1869, thick enough to sting the eyes and scrape the throat. The air smelled of pine sap and tobacco, a harsh mix that settled heavy on the skin. On a stage made of crooked crates, a young woman stood with a rough burlap sack tied over her face. Her hands were bound, her stance steady, but her breath came fast and uneven. Her name was Clara Wren. The men gathered around the stage shouted insults and ugly guesses about the stranger hiding beneath the sack. Their voices rose like a storm, feeding on one another, their boots grinding the dirt as if ready to claim her before the auction even began. Then a tall figure stepped forward. Caleb Holt, a lumberjack known for strength more than words, pushed through the crowd. His coat hung loose on his broad shoulders, and his black hat cast a deep shadow across his face. The muscles in his hands tensed from years of swinging an axe through frozen timber. $2, Caleb said, his voice low and solid. The auctioneer hesitated. You ain't even seen her face, mister. I'm buying a woman, not a face, Caleb replied, each word steady and final. Silence crawled across the yard. Even the wind seemed to pause. Clara lifted her chin beneath the sack, hearing something in Caleb's voice that pulled at an old memory. When she whispered her own name to confirm the sale, the sound drifted across the outpost like a quiet echo. Caleb stiffened. He knew that voice. Once, deep in a winter storm, a woman had kept him alive with a gentle hum and careful hands. He had never forgotten her. But she was gone. Or so he thought. Caleb untied the rope from Clara's wrists and guided her toward the woods. The outpost's cruel laughter faded behind them as they walked through crushed pine needles and shadows thick as smoke. The rope around her hands was loose now, more symbolic than restraining, but her steps stayed cautious. The burlap sack was tied lightly at her neck, so she could see just enough to walk. Its frayed hem fluttered when the wind shifted, showing him quick glimpses of her chin and jawline, but never more. The forest swallowed them, softening every sound. The trail wound between towering pines, their needles whispering overhead. Clara's dress was worn and thin, not suited for this land, but she kept her steps sure. Caleb tried not to stare, keeping his eyes on the path ahead, jaw tight with thoughts he couldn't name. When his small log cabin came into view, built against a rocky rise, Clara paused. A rusty horseshoe hung above the door, a sign someone once hoped for luck. Inside, Caleb stepped away from her, giving her room to choose where to stand. No one's placing you now, he said quietly. You stand where you choose. Clara moved slowly toward the far wall, her fingers grazing the wooden floor until she knelt, keeping her back protected, her posture wary. The burlap sack hit her face, but her fear was something Caleb could feel like heat from a fire. He didn't touch her. He didn't question her. He simply went to the stove and set a pot of water heating, letting the warmth fill the room. He placed a wooden bowl near her and backed away. I always make enough for two, he said, not looking at her. Used to be for my wife. After she passed, I kept the habit. Clara lifted the edge of the sack just enough to see the bowl. Her movements were careful and practiced, as if she had lived too long expecting harm. She ate slow, as if tasting trust itself. Caleb kept his eyes on the fire, wrestling with memories that cut too deep. The snowbound cave, the voice that kept him awake when death circled him like wolves. Clara's voice had the same quiet strength. Could it be her? The woman who disappeared before he ever learned her name? He didn't ask. He couldn't. When she finished eating, Clara tightened the sack again. Her hands shook only slightly. You don't know me, she said. Caleb turned, elbows resting on his knees, firelight flickering across his face. Don't need to, not yet. Her breath hitched. A wall rose between them, built from old fear and memories she could not speak of. Caleb stepped outside into the cold night, letting the sharp air calm him. The sky above burned with stars, bright and unforgiving. Behind him, inside the cabin, Clara sat alone. She touched the edge of the sack, holding it like a shield. She didn't know if Caleb Holt was a safe man or a dangerous man. All she knew was he had spent $2 to claim a woman with no past, no name, and no promise. And all Caleb knew was that he had brought a stranger into his home, but her voice pulled at ghosts he thought he had buried. Something dangerous was coming. The forest felt too still, the air too heavy, and both of them sensed it. Spring pushed gently through the Oregon pines, softening the air and filling the forest with the scent of new life. Clara Wren moved with quiet purpose now. She stayed close to the cabin, helping where she could, learning the patterns of the land. The burlap sack remained tied loosely at her neck, letting her see the ground as she worked. Its frayed edges shifted with each turn of her head, hiding most of her face but giving her enough sight to move freely. Day by day, she and Caleb Holt fell into an unspoken rhythm. She mended shirts with steady hands, stitching the torn cloth with careful precision. Her fingers carried small scars, markers of a life she never spoke about. Caleb worked beside her, swinging his axe through logs with controlled power, each strike echoing through the clearing like a heartbeat. But even with the simple routines, their world was thick with unspoken tension. Caleb felt it every time Clara moved close enough that he could hear her breathe. He tried to bury it beneath old promises. His wife's memory still lived inside these walls. A vow made long ago tied him to a grief he wasn't ready to let go. Still, Clara's presence warmed the cold corners of the cabin in a way he could not ignore. One evening, clouds gathered above the treetops, bruised and heavy with the promise of a storm. Caleb went searching for Clara near the river. He found her kneeling at the bank, fetching water. She loosened the knot of the sack just enough to see the bucket's rim, humming a soft tune as she worked. The melody froze Caleb in place. It was the same tune from years ago, drifting through the darkness of a snowbound cave. The same voice that had kept him awake through a night when death felt too close. The song was gentle, steady, and carried a strength he had never forgotten. Clara turned slowly, sensing him. "You all right?" she asked, tightening the sack as she stood. Caleb swallowed hard. "Where'd you learn that song?" She hesitated. "A long time ago," she said quietly. "When someone showed me a bit of kindness." Before he could ask more, thunder rolled across the sky. Clara reached for the bucket, and her hands shook slightly. Caleb stepped closer instinctively, ready to help. But then a sharp crack echoed through the woods. Not thunder. A branch snapping. Too close. Too deliberate. Caleb's entire body tensed. "Clara," he said softly, "we're not alone." She froze. The burlap sack fluttered as her breath quickened. She scanned the trees through the frayed hem, her posture tight and alert. Then came the sound of hoofbeats, slow, heavy, drawing nearer. A rider emerged from the shadows. Jasper Kane. His long duster coat hung in tatters, and his eyes were cold, sharp, calculating. He was known across the region as a bounty hunter, who never failed to find who he hunted. His gaze locked onto Clara, studying the hidden face beneath the burlap. "Evening, Hall," Jasper said, his voice smooth as polished steel. "Heard you took yourself a new wife." Caleb stepped in front of Clara, blocking her from view. "That's none of your business." Jasper smirked. "Oh, it might be. Word is, there's a woman on the run. A woman with a scar running from blood." Clara's hand brushed Caleb's arm, trembling. The simple touch was enough to tell him the truth. Jasper knew exactly who she was. "What do you want, Kane?" Caleb growled. "Just a bit of conversation," Jasper said. "And maybe a bounty if you're stubborn." The wind picked up, rustling pine needles across the ground. Clara lowered her head, drawing the sack closer to her face. The fear rolling off her was quiet but real. Jasper leaned forward in his saddle. "Might drop by again soon. Can't say I like loose ends." With that, he turned his horse and melted back into the trees. Caleb waited until the hoofbeats died completely before speaking. "We're heading back," he said. "Now, Clara followed him through the forest, keeping pace despite the roots and shadows. Her fear made her steps quick, but she stayed close. When they reached the cabin, Caleb barred the door and checked every window twice. Inside, the air felt heavy with questions. Caleb turned to her. "You need to tell me what he's chasing you for." Clara tugged the knot on the sack, gripping it tightly. "I killed a man," she said, voice low but steady. "Back in Missouri, he attacked me. I fought back. I didn't mean to end him. But his people said I did. They hunted me. And I ran." Caleb stared at her, struggling to match the woman before him with the story she carried. "You're not a murderer?" he said finally. Before Clara could answer, a thud slammed against the cabin door. Hard, heavy. Caleb grabbed his rifle. "Stay behind me." The door shuddered again, then burst open. Jasper Kane stepped inside, pistol drawn, eyes cold with purpose. "Time's up, Hole," he said. "Hand her over." Caleb placed himself between Clara and the danger, jaw set, stance wide. "No," he said. And the storm inside the cabin broke open. The cabin trembled with the force of Jasper Kane's entrance. Wind pushed through the broken doorway, scattering dust across the floor. Caleb Holt planted his feet, rifle raised, keeping Clara behind him. Her breath shook through the loose burlap sack, the frayed edges trembling near her cheek. Jasper stepped farther into the room, pistol steady in his hand. "You know how this goes," he said coldly. "Move aside, Hole. She's coming with me." Caleb didn't flinch. "She's not yours to take." A smirk twisted across Jasper's face. "She's a fugitive. I bring her in. The law pays me." "You stand in the way. You go down with her." Clara's fingers gripped Caleb's coat, not in fear alone, but in something like desperate trust. Caleb could feel her shaking, but she didn't run. She stayed behind him, anchored to his presence like it was the last solid thing in her world. Jasper's eyes narrowed at the connection. "Don't tell me you care for her," he taunted. "You don't even know her face." Caleb lowered his rifle a fraction, not toward surrender, but toward steadier aim. "That doesn't matter." For the first time, Jasper's confidence wavered. Clara stepped forward then. "Please," she said, her voice trembling but strong. "You don't understand. I didn't choose any of this." Jasper swung his pistol toward her. "I understand plenty." Caleb moved fast. He shoved Clara toward the corner and fired. The shot cracked the air, splintering wood near Jasper's boot. Jasper returned fire, the bullet burning across Caleb's arm and sending him stumbling. Clara cried out but didn't freeze. She darted to Caleb's side, ripping a strip from her sleeve and pressing it against his bleeding arm. "Stay down," he ordered. But Jasper was already closing in. Clara grabbed the nearest thing she could, a metal fire iron, and swung. It clipped Jasper's shoulder, knocking him off balance. Caleb seized the moment. He lunged, tackling Jasper to the ground. The rifle skidded across the floor, out of reach. The two men fought, rolling across the floor with raw force. Fists struck, boots scraped, and grunts filled the small room. Jasper was strong. But Caleb fought with something deeper, the need to protect the woman who had already saved his life once before. Clara scrambled for the rifle, hands trembling. She lifted it, the barrel shaking as she pointed it toward the struggle. "Stop!" she cried. But Jasper only laughed, even with Caleb's forearm pinned across his chest. "You want the truth, Hole?" he spat. "Ask her about the man she killed, the one she claims attacked her." Clara froze. Jasper's eyes glinted with cruel satisfaction. "He was my brother." The room went silent. Caleb's grip faltered for a heartbeat. He looked at Clara. She stood rigid, the burlap sack shifting with her uneven breaths. Her hands lowered the rifle slowly, the weight of Jasper's accusation pressing down like a mountain. Clara shook her head. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I only fought because he hurt me. I didn't even know his name." Jasper snarled and twisted, breaking free of Caleb's hold just enough to grab for his pistol. Caleb reacted first, slamming his knife down, not into Jasper, but through his sleeve, pinning his arm to the floorboards. "Enough," Caleb growled. "This ends now." Jasper thrashed, but the fight drained from him. Caleb bound his wrists with Clara's discarded twine, tying it tight. He hauled Jasper up and shoved him toward the door. "You come with me to the sheriff," Caleb said. "Alive!" Jasper spat blood onto the floor. "You're a fool, Hole. Protecting her won't change what happened." Caleb didn't answer. He dragged the bounty hunter outside and tied him to the post until dawn, when he could ride him to town. Days passed. Whispers traveled through the outpost like wildfire. Piece by piece, the truth unraveled. A cook from Missouri, Eleanor Tate, stepped forward before Sheriff Amos Reed. Her voice was steady despite trembling hands. "I saw it," Eleanor said. "Clara fought for her life. I begged her to run before they blamed her for a crime she didn't commit." The sheriff nodded slowly. "That story holds true. The warrant is lifted. Clara Wren was free at last." When Caleb returned to the cabin, Clara stood outside with the burlap sack folded in her hands. She had stitched purple flowers along the edge, turning the rough cloth into something gentle, something hers. "You don't have to hide anymore," Caleb said softly. Her fingers trembled as she lowered the sack. For the first time, Caleb saw her face fully. The scar ran across her cheek, a mark of survival, not shame. Her eyes were soft but strong, full of gratitude and something deeper. "I thought I lost everything," she said, "but you gave me a place to stand again." Caleb stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "You saved me once. Maybe we were meant to find each other again." They married beneath a canopy of pines, the forest quiet, as if holding its breath. Clara's dress was simple, her veil made from the old burlap sack she had once worn in fear. Now it was stitched with small signs of hope. Together they planted a pine seedling beside the cabin. Its roots took hold deep in the soil, a promise of new beginnings. As the sun dipped low, Clara slid her hand into Caleb's, their scars meeting, their pasts finally at peace. The road ahead stretched wide and wild, but for the first time they faced it together.